In part 4 here, I want to cover texturing two separate objects here in Max. One's going to be this reception desk, and another one is going to be these little pieces of decor. Now the twist to this whole thing is this reception desk has UVs, and this decor does not. So we're going to kind of feature how Substance Painter can now take objects without UVs and auto unwrap them. So let me first kind of get into how I got this set up. This reception desk is actually 3 parts. If it's in a group, if I open that, we have this, what's going to be this metal part, where you're going to have this marble kind of wraparound, and then this back piece is going to be wood. So each one of these has its own texture set. Again, I've UV'd these. We've taken up its own one-to-one space. I've done as best as I can to keep things super linear, so we don't want anything kind of rotated at a 45 or anything kind of not linear, up and down, left or right. So I've done my best at trying to keep everything super linear. There's UVs on this one as well, same deal. Trying to minimize space so we don't have very little wasted space. It was a little harder on this metal portion, is if I pop into this, again, trying to get as little UV shells as possible, wasted space, everything's up and down, left and right. Now, why is this important for the up and down, left and right? This will help with the baking engine hide the seams of the object a little better. Sometimes when UV shells are kind of rotated, we get this like anti-aliasing, kind of like how you see in this checkerboard. You get this kind of checkerboard effect down a seam. So keeping these up and down, left and right will kind of help with that as a whole. Additionally, I have gone through and textured or thrown a Corona material on each of these and named them accordingly. So I've got a material on here. This one's named R for reception desk metal. We have another one that is R desk, which is, I believe, this wraparound here. And then R wood, which is this kind of desk portion. Now what this does is this tells Substance Painter, okay, this is going to be on its own texture set, this is going to be on its own texture set, and this will. Now if I was to go ahead and put all of these under one material and just name it reception desk, they would all need to share a one-to-one space, and that wouldn't work right now because all the UVs would be overlapping. But because I want to get a lot of information out of the texture sets themselves, I want this to be on like a 2 or 4K texture, this to be on a 2 or 4K texture, and this to be on a 2 or 4K texture. So we're just kind of maximizing our textile density in those. And then these, like I said, do not have UVs at all. These are just kind of some quick and dirty objects created in Max. No UV map we can see on the right. And then this is all just going to be one texture set for all 4 of these. So I've gone ahead and applied this material here, Decor White, and exported these. So real quick, just to show that, File, Export Selection, and I've already kind of exported this one out and tested it. We're going to name it Decor. We're going to click Save, and we'll override that one. And really important here, we want to do triangulate and smoothing groups. This is going to be in Unreal Engine in part 5, and this will kind of help all that process, and we'll click OK. And there you go. And it also, too, it shows us that our material there, Decor White, is on those. So again, this has no UVs, and the reception desk does. Each part of the reception desk has its own material applied to each individual part that I want a texture set to be assigned to. And again, I selected all of these and exported these out and applied just one texture set. So they're on one. So let's jump over to Substance Painter, and I'll show you first with the decor how Painter now automatically unwraps objects for us. So I'll see you on the other side. All right, once we're in Substance Painter here, we're going to go File, New, and we're going to say Select, and we're going to choose the decor. And then I'm not going to be importing cameras or don't have UDIM, so we can just click OK. And now we'll see the automatic UV unwrapping. So this kind of just tells us the progress of that. Now, if you have a really dense mesh, it's going to take a while for that process to happen. Because these are pretty simple, that happened pretty quickly. But if we check up here, if I go down to, let's say, 3D and 2D view, we see that Substance Painter now has unwrapped our decor objects for us. Now, this is great if you are a texture artist and you don't have access to 3D software to unwrap something and you just need to do your thing. Substance Painter will automatically unwrap this stuff, and you can just kind of hit the ground running. The one limitation we have is we don't have control over where these seams are being tossed. However, Substance Painter has a lot of features built into it that allow us to hide these seams, but using things like painting things out or triplanar texturing, that kind of thing. So let's do some quick little textures that'll tie into some accents that we're going to have on the reception desk. So I'm going to jump into 3D view. The first thing we need to do is bake this so that Substance Painter knows what these objects are. I'm going to go down and we're just going to say match by mesh name on the normals. I don't have or did not set up ID maps on these. So I'll turn that off. And then ambient occlusion, I don't want them casting AO on each other, so you'd get a little bit of darkness between these two because they're kind of close. And the way to get rid of that is self-inclusion. We'll say only by mesh name. So again, this pillar isn't going to make a dark spot kind of on the side of this little guy here. Okay, go back up, and I'm just going to do a quick 4K bake. You don't have to necessarily do a high-res bake on something maybe this small, but things like the curvature maps, the AO, stuff like that for generators, we'll get a better result if we have a higher bake. So I'll do 4K on that, and we'll do bake mesh maps, and I will see you guys on the other side. All right, now that it is done, we'll click OK. And we'll look up here. I go to the top. We have decor white. Again, this is the material that we applied to the object in Max. That's how it kind of names or keeps that same naming convention to keep everyone organized. So let's just do, there's a little accent on the reception desk that is kind of this like aged bronze material, and I want to kind of tie that in. So I was just going to procedurally do this, and I'll show you guys some of the issues we have with the automatic unwrapping, and then too how to fix them as well. So right off the gate, we just kind of get this kind of old looking bronze material. Asperity, I want to turn that down. That's these little bumps in there. And I kind of like the dirt. Now the big thing again that I've talked about with CG is breakup. We could just take this and run with it and be done. However, I always like to break up pretty much all of the channels that I can, with the exception of metal or metallic. So color, break up roughness, even break up kind of the normal height information, just so it's not like super smooth, like especially on this guy. So there are some presets here if you guys want to play around with some of those, some dusty looking, some pristine. Yeah, but I just kind of like the stock ones. So let me go ahead and get back to that. And maybe we'll use one of the presets, the dusty version and use like a generator to kind of create that. So let me kick this down, kick up our normal map. Now, to hide some of these seams, let's see if we can find one. And again, this is a good problem to have if we can't. See that seam right there kind of going down the middle of this guy? Easy way to get rid of that is to move to triplanar mapping. So here it says UV projection. If I just go to triplanar, that should solve that. So pretty quickly, boom, seam's gone. Not too bad at all. And what's kind of cool is you get this dimpled effect. I wonder if we can kind of crank that a little bit, because that's looking kind of cool. Yeah. Now another problem we run into is the scale of these objects themselves. So if we notice, the dimpling on this little pot on the right is a lot bigger than what we have going on with these in the center. So to fix that, what I'll do is I'll duplicate this and what's kind of stacked on top of each other. Let me go ahead and set a black mask on both of these, and we'll paint back in what we want where. So if I click on the black mask, again, make sure you're clicked on the black mask. Go up here, and we're going to say add paint. I just like to do the geometry paint. So on the very left-hand side, I believe it's called polyfill. We're going to go to the whole element mode, and we're going to say white. White is where this material is going to show up. Black is where it's going to be erased from. So if I go white, white, boom, there you go. Again, if you don't want one of them, go to black with the color, paint it out. But again, we'll leave that white. So the reason I parted these out is I want the repeating pattern to be upped on these two. So this was set to 2. What if we cranked it up to 4 to try to match these two center ones? Again, I want more repeats of this kind of dimpling effect. And we'll go to white on this and white on that. And to get rid of this kind of wireframe mode, just go back up to paint and we can look at it. So it's close, maybe 4 is too much. Let's try 3. If I get into that, it's kind of looking a little closer. And that's good enough. We'll kind of leave it at that. Okay. Now let's add some grunge on this. Again, let's start with breaking up the roughness of this guy. And again, this had a preset. So if I duplicate this out and we'll say a black mask on this guy, and let's go to presets and we're going to say dusty antique. And actually, let's add a white mask so we can see it. Oh yeah, at the top up here. Okay. So we get that dusty effect. I don't want it to affect the normal height information because I don't want it to cover up the dimpling that we created there. So I'll turn that off. We'll keep metallic, we'll keep color, we'll keep roughness. Now up here, let's go ahead and actually we'll go up here and say add generator. And what I like is this mask builder. This gives us a lot of control over things like ambient occlusion, curvature, world space controls. I really dig this. If I start playing with this slider, we can kind of see the effect of it. It's kind of hard to see. One cool way to kind of view what this is masking in and out is if we go up to our black area here or the mask up here, we hold Alt on the keyboard and click. we can now visualize what's happening on the model rather than having to try to guess. We can kind of see if this is bleeding in or not, or if it's cool. So what I kind of want is just it building up around the cracks in here. That's generally controlled, obviously, with AO. So let's go ahead and do this. I'll turn contrast down. And again, we see seams. Let me flip over. Yeah, see that again? We'll use this triplanar here. Solves that problem for us. Pretty easy. Okay, turn contrast up, turn the level down a little bit. Now, I don't want it on the edges. It's not like an edge wear, like someone's rubbed the sides. Like I would almost even make it more polished. So I'm going to turn off curvature, kill that. And we'll go open up AO. I'm going to start pulling this up and we'll see that. And we can kind of turn up the contrast. Well, I like it kind of deep. But I do want to add some noise. Again, breakup, right? Another way to break up, but then we lose some of it. So we got to pull it in a little more. There we go. Now, if I just click on the color, it brings back. We don't really see much of it, right? So let's make this a little more intense. If I turn up super rough, there we go. We kind of get that. We get that in there. I might even be able to turn the metallic off. And sometimes that'll give us a little more contrast in there. So breaking up that, let's add more roughness to the outside. So I'll just do another channel. Let's keep color. We'll keep metallic. And actually, let me go back to this guy. Was metallic. I'll leave metallic on. Okay. So I'll turn metallic off. We'll keep roughness like up big time. Now the color, we're going to end up doing like a multiply on that. So, and we'll turn off normal and height. Okay. First things, let me just turn the base color. I'm going to turn this on a multiply. Kind of darkens everything. That's pretty cool. Now again, I want to distribute this kind of through the model. So I'll right click, we'll say add black mask. And instead of a generator, let's do a fill. So we can take some of the procedurals here or some of these grunges and we can pipe this in, kind of get some of this going here. And again, we don't want to do the UV projection, excuse me, we want to do triplanar projection. Okay. And if we want to see what this is doing, again, alt left click, and it tells us, kind of shows us what's going on. And look at the grunge. We'll say, kind of turn the contrast up. Now, if we want to break this up even more, breakup on top of breakup on top of breakup, we're going to go to add another fill. Let's just add something like some scratches. Yeah, let's do something like these wipes maybe. Now, because this is set to normal, it's just overriding what's below it. But we want it to be like in addition to. So if I know what I want to add is these white areas, I want to turn this to screen. And if you notice, that'll kind of add to that. And let's see if triplanar, that'll work well. Yeah, that's looking cool. So I'll go back and we'll kind of play with this a little bit. And I don't like that some of that's up there. Maybe I can pull back the grunge map a little bit. Yeah. Turn down the contrast. There you go. Soften it up a bit. Okay. So something like that's cool. So we have some color or diffuse breakup in here. If I say dirt, it kind of adds, if we see up here. Actually, let me turn up the resolution for us. Let's go to 2K. So I see like dirt kind of breaks up the color or diffuse kind of automatically. So I don't feel like I want to do any more of that. If you want to, just to kind of show you, and actually let's start naming some of these. We'll name this kind of rough grunge. Got to stay organized. And this is kind of more grunge. And we'll leave that. This one we can kill because it's not serving a purpose. All right, scratches. That's what we were going to do. Go up to the top. We'll say add fill layer. I'm going to turn off everything. We leave normal and height. We turn down scratches a little bit, or turn down the height a little bit for our scratches. Add a black mask, and we're going to say add a fill. And there's a scratch generator. Let's see if we can find that. It's either in here, procedurals. Here we go. Grunge scratch generator. Pipe that in. So this is going to tell Painter where this height information is going to be added. So the height is being controlled by this layer, and then where it's being added is being controlled by this generator. So it's kind of cool. So actually, let me turn this up so we can see the effect pretty hardcore. And I'm going to dial it back once I get things where I want it. So something like that's kind of cool. I don't know if I like the contrast. And two, let's just say like, if I dial this back, let's just say maybe it's too harsh. Like, yeah, like I want to soften this a little bit. We can add a blur on top. So if we say add a filter, and in here we'll just type in blur. Now keep this because this will filter out just all of the filters. We'll say blur. Okay. And then we can kind of control the intensity. So see how it kind of just softens that up? So again, I want it to look worn. I don't want these to look like it just got scratched yesterday. But you know what too? Let's add a little darkness in those scratches. So we'll go back to our base channel. Let's add our color. We can kind of keep it a little darker. And then let's change this blend mode of the base color to multiply. And we can kind of see how far we want to go with that. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that. Might want to turn down the scratches a little, just a smidge. Or maybe I'll control it through the height. Okay. Looking kind of cool. So if you guys want to move the environment around, hold shift, right click, move left and right, and you can kind of see what that's ending up looking like. So let's just get this back over to 3ds Max and I'll show you guys how to connect up the textures. Actually, let's go ahead and work on our desk and then we'll do all the textures at once. Okay, one thing before we forget, we need to export this model out because you have to remember Substance Painter went ahead and calculated the UVs on these. So we can't just go back and apply the textures in 3ds Max because the model within Max doesn't have UVs. So what we need to do is go to File and we'll go to Export Mesh. And it's going to ask us where we want to save this. Now, name it whatever you'd like. We can name it Decor Export, and you have your options for how you want to export. OBJ is probably one of the most recognized out of all of those. And we'll click Save, and I already saved that, so there we go. Now we've just got to remember to import this into 3ds Max before we start texturing up. Again, because the model that we have in Max doesn't have UVs. So let's go ahead and save this out, and we'll get over to our reception desk. Okay, now that that is all saved out, let's go ahead and pull up our reception desk. We'll do File New, we'll go over to Select and pull up Reception. Not using cameras, not using UDIMs, we'll leave it all the same, we'll click OK. Now as you saw, this actually has UVs, so we didn't have that pop-up where it's going to be unwrapping this for us. Only does it if it doesn't recognize the object has UVs. Now let's move over and get our bakes. Actually, before we do, we'll check texture sets. So again, the materials that we applied, the naming convention comes through. Each one of these has their own little texture set that they're on. They're unique and individual from each other, which is what we wanted. So let's go to texture set settings, and we'll do a quick little bake here. Now again, I didn't do ID maps on that, so I can turn that off. And we'll just say by mesh name, ambient occlusion, same deal. And we'll go back up to common, and I'll do a quick little 4K bake. I will see you guys on the other side. Oh, yeah, and just a note, I can just bake one of the texture sets, but I want all of them to be at this 4K resolution, so we'll say bake all texture sets. Okay, be right back. Okay, our bake is finished here. And let's first start off with the bronze material since we were just kind of working on that with the decor. So we can just drag and drop this on. And let's turn off this asperity. Now, I don't want to go crazy with dirt or grime because this is kind of a nice hotel. You generally wouldn't see a really dirty reception desk in a nice hotel. But I do want to add a little bit of maybe dust kind of build up in the corners here. So let's go ahead and we'll kill this layer and add a new one. We'll leave color on. I'm going to turn the roughness up. We're not going to deal with normal and height. And let's go ahead and do base color. We'll do multiply. I'll kind of darken things up. We'll name this grunge. Okay. We'll add a generator. Oops, back up. We need to do black mask. Now add a generator. And we'll do this mask builder again. And again, I just kind of want to build up in corners, so I don't want the grunge. But let's look at this real quick. Hold Alt, left click. We can see what this mask is affecting. If I go back to this, I'm going to turn this grunge off. So then we get this nice kind of AO going on. I'll dig that. Kind of what I was going for. Let's go into more AO settings. We can have the range, how far you want that to spread out. And I'm going to turn the noisiness up. And actually, let's break this up a little more with another fill. So if I go back, you can kind of see it. It's subtle. That's kind of what I want. I don't want it going crazy. However, let's turn this up a little more. So you see how that's kind of affecting that? But let's break this up. So I'm going to add another fill layer. Let's go over to grunges, just find something Nice and grungy looking, like this guy. Toss him over. Now, I don't want it overwriting what's below it. We need to set a blend mode. So I need to figure out in the map, do I want the white parts coming through or do I want the black parts coming through? That'll let us know if we're going to multiply or screen. So if I invert this, and we'll do something like that. And yeah, I kind of want these white parts coming through. Actually, let's do the black one. So we'll do multiply. That'll take away from some of the map. So you see that? It just adds these blacks in this white area, kind of cuts it out. And again, super subtle. This is what I'm going for. I don't want anything too crazy. This is a nice hotel. Don't want to get too excited. Okay, let's do the marble. Now, Substance Source has a lot of crazy marble textures. So let's take a look at those. If we click Substance Source, this loads. I was kind of poking around earlier. On the left here, if we click Marble Granite, make sure you log in. We can look at all they've got with marble. And they actually have this really cool, this one here, this white marble. I love this. This looks great right out of the gate. So all you need to do is go down here, click Download. It takes a second, pops up in your material slots or area. And I'm just going to say marble. Search for that. So white marble. All we need to do is click, drag, boom, there you go. It's that easy. Okay, so same deal with this guy. We're going to leave this guy pretty fresh. I do want to break up some of this roughness. I don't want to mess with bump very much or some of the normal information. So just the roughness we're going to break up on this guy. So I'll delete this bottom layer. We'll go to fill and turn off everything but roughness. Make it kind of rough and add a black mask. Let's name this roughness. Okay, and we need to add, let's just do a fill. There's this cool like wipe texture that is in the grunges. That's cool for things like glass or surfaces that are generally pretty clean, but someone's gone through and wiped them down, and you get that kind of residue of whatever the cleaning agent is. So this grunge wipe, I like this one a lot. Same deal, we'll hold Alt, left click, take a look at this. Let's actually move this to triplanar and see if we can get it to round the corner nicely. So we got to find this area in our texture set. So let's find this swoosh there. That's pretty cool. And it looks like here. So this little part here ends up there. So if it was to wrap the corner, it'd be like something like this. Yep. Okay. So then you get that swoosh around the corner. That's kind of cool. I like that. Okay, we'll go back by just clicking on the diffuse area. And again, you get that breakup. It's super subtle. So if I want to go crazy with it, you can kind of see it up in here. But again, subtleties, small things, small breakups, just kind of helps add a little more realism to your scenes. Now, last part here, or actually second to last because I thought of something else, is I want a little wood texture going on here. Now, we don't necessarily see it, right, on the front. However, when we have light bouncing, a darker color like wood is going to bounce GI differently than if we just left it white. Now, we could probably just do a chrono material on this, put brown on it and be fine. But in some shots, we might kind of see this lip. So I wanted to make sure this was textured too. I actually really like this beach mid brown wood. Yeah, this guy's cool. Drag that on. And this is a great place to start. Again, another Substance Source material. I tend to grab a lot of these and just adjust them, but they're a great place to start. The one thing I don't like about this material is its normal and height information. So I'll actually first turn up the repeats on this to something like 4 is kind of cool. And let's turn down some of this normal and height information. So we'll go up to the top. We'll say normal, kind of turn that back. The biggest offender is the height. Now, I generally like to leave a little too much information because I can always back out of the map a little bit in 3ds Max, adjusting the material, but we can't add it back, right? So I'll generally give it a little too much and then adjust it in Max as I'm kind of connecting materials up. This feels a little too much, but we'll leave it here for now. And actually, let's turn this up to, yeah, we're only in 1K. Let's turn up to 2K. Just to give us a little more detail there. So again, too crazy, but we'll back some of it out. I'll show you how to do that. Let's go ahead and break up some of the diffuse color. We've got a little bit of these kind of highlights and dark parts, but let's do a little more and then we'll do some roughness as well. So actually, yeah, we'll turn this off so we can see what we're doing first. Let's add another layer. Say roughness. And delete this bottom guy to stay organized. Turn off metal, leave rough on, normal height off. Make it rough. And we'll kind of leave it at this. So let's first go to base color. We're going to say multiply here. Kind of darkens it up. See that? And then the roughness, if I turn this on and off, let's see how that affects that. Yeah. See, there's a little bit of roughness already built in. So you could get away with just using this, but hey, a little more roughness never hurt anybody. Right click, add black mask, add a fill. You guys are getting my workflow here. It's pretty easy, and I abuse the heck out of these fills and generators. So let's just use this grunge, kind of pipe that in there. And that's cool because you're getting kind of just some of that naturally, right? Let's look at this. Alt left click on the mask itself. Make sure we click back on the grunge. It's a little much. Maybe we'll turn this to like 2. Something like that. Yeah, let's try triplanar. So again, like we were kind of playing with an alchemist, there's no right or wrong answer. Just play with something till you like it, till you got it where you want it. Okay. So diffuse, looking way too crazy. Let's multiply, turn down this multiply a little bit. So there's some in there, right? We're getting some, that's looking good. And then it's kind of showing up. And then let's cut back the roughness a little bit because I think it's a little too crazy too. And we'll back some of that out. So we click on the main channel, back out some of the roughness. You know, you can kind of add it and take it away as need be. So again, more breakup. We see a little bit there. This is from the substance source material. This is from us. So again, looking good. So can't forget, need to turn our normal and height back on. Oops, need to do it in this material. Turn it back off. Okay. Okay, that's looking cool. Now, one last thing I wanted to kind of do. This is a little difficult to do in Corona Render, but I wanted to add a bottom glow with an emissive texture, like a self-illumination. They call it emissive in Painter. And this requires a few extra steps, but it's going to look really cool. So I want to do this. We're going to go up to this texture set settings, and we're going to go to channels, and we're going to say emissive. There you go. So what this does is it allows us in these different layers to turn on an emissive on this. So I'm going to add a new layer. We're going to name it emissive. And we want this white. Now, it is unnatural to be with a PBR texture to be 100% white or 100% black. Anything or anytime you're creating a texture, you always want it to be just kind of below white or just below black. Nothing is ever pure white or pure black. And actually, pure white will mess up GI calculations in Corona. So we don't want to push white crazy, crazy far. Okay. And actually, we're on the wrong texture. So let me delete this guy back out. Let's go to our desk. So again, add this channel, name it emissive. And we need to add emissive here. There you go. So these channels are per texture sets. So I could technically go back to the wood and turn it off, but it's fine. We will leave it. All right. So as you see down here, we have our emissive that we can tick on. I only want color and emissive at this point. And again, we don't want pure white, but we'll get close. But with emissive, we'll go pure white pretty much. Now, I think the way I UV'd this, if I add a black mask, we're going to say a paint, and we're going to use polyfill tool. I think I UV channeled out the bottom here. So if I click, yep, there you go. You just get this cool edge lighting. You see this a lot in fancy hotels in Vegas and things. And this is going to cause one, we're going to emit light with it, but then you're going to see it in the reflections as well, which will be kind of cool. Add more of a glow effect. Okay. So for the sake of time, we'll call that done. And then let me show you how to get these textures out. Now this workflow is the same for the decor, so nothing's going to change between exporting this texture set and the other. However, I need to show you how to get emissive out of our textures, as I believe it doesn't come set default. So if I go to File, we're going to go to Export Textures, and we're going to go straight to Configuration, and we're going to go to Corona Render. Now, if you do not see this emissive texture, because I believe I put this in myself. If I delete this, you might just see this. Now, we need to tell Substance Painter that we're going to export a RGB map from this. So we're going to click RGB up here, and I want to keep the same naming convention. So if I copy and paste this down, we're just going to change this to emissive. Now we need to pipe in the emissive channel in this little box here. So the emissive channel, click drag, pipe it in, and it's going to ask us, do it red, green, blue, where do we want this? We're going to say all three, red, green, and blue. That easy. So now we get an emissive channel from any channel that we turned on, or texture set that we turned on the emissive channel on. So I will go back to export. I want to do a close-up render of this reception desk, so I'm going to do 4K on all of these, Just be mindful, if it's not going to be really close to the camera, we don't need a lot of detail. Do not do 4K. It's going to be loading up your RAM during rendering. And if you've gone crazy, I've done this in a scene, gone 8K everything, you're going to need like 64, 100, 120 gigs to render the scene out. So be mindful of what's going to be close to camera. Do larger maps for the closer objects. Do smaller maps like 1K, 2K for objects that are kind of way in the back. Now I want to choose Corona Render as our engine. So we'll do that up there. And let's go ahead and save it. We'll keep it as a PNG 8-bit. If you want more depth out of this, you can go to 16-bit. If you want something that's highly compressed, you can go to JPEGs. If you want something that's uncompressed, I would suggest something like a TIFF at 32-bit. But these textures are massive. So again, be mindful of your project, how much RAM you have, what system you're on. So PNG 8-bit, that's fine. And then we're going to choose our location of where this is going. So let me go ahead and pipe this in. I'm going to put this in our texture folder for us. You guys will have access to this because should be able to download and play with the scenes that I have. Okay, and that's it. And all we need to do is click export. So this is going to get going. It'll write all of our textures to disk. Make sure you also do this for your decor, but we'll jump over to Max and I'll show you how to pipe all these in and also deal with the emissive channel. So we'll be right back. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention now that we're back, this is done. I actually want to get this emissive mask out of Painter. Now we can export these masks that we end up creating. Gives us a little more control in the render engine. So let me show you how to do that. Now, this mask's resolution is actually dependent on the texture set's resolution in the viewport. So if I export this mask as it is right now, it's only going to export at 1024. So let me actually kick this up to 4K and it'll refresh. Now we can click on our mask here. We're going to right click and we're going to say export mask to file. And we'll just pop this in our texture set. I'm going to name this Reception Emissive Mask. Cool. Again, it just saves as a file, and then we can use a blend material to kind of help bring this emissive channel to life. So let's jump over to Max, and I'll show you guys how to connect these texture sets up. Okay, now that we are back in Max, the first thing we need to do is make sure we get our decor imported back in, as it has the UVs from Substance Painter. So we'll go ahead and grab all these, and we'll delete them. Oh, there we go. And we'll go File, Import, Import. And we're going to choose our decor export. The decor was what we exported from Max, and this is what we're bringing back in from Substance Painter. So we're going to say all of that. We will import that. Okay, there it is. Now let's start with hooking up the maps for these guys first. Now remember, these all four share the same texture or texture set. So we'll go in and we will find our decor white. We're actually going to change this and change it over to Corona material. We can leave it decor. We'll just name it decor, actually. Let's go ahead and find our texture maps here. If I go back to our project file and I'll go to textures, what I can do is I just type in into the search box decor, and it brings up all the maps so that we're not searching through a ton of maps, especially when our scenes get really large. You're going to have a lot of different texture sets in there. So let's just go through this step by step. So first, the diffuse map goes into diffuse, pretty easy. Reflection into reflection. Glossiness into reflection glossiness down here. IOR into Fresnel IOR. Now normal and height are going to go into bump, but we need a little node here, this Corona normal node. And we'll go normal into normal and height down here at the bottom where it says additional bump. Some of these textures are linear textures, so we need to make an adjustment to them and tell Max that they're linear textures. The general rule of thumb is if the texture map doesn't include color, with the exception of the normal map, if it's just a black and white map, then we need to change it to a linear map within Max. So let's just go through them one by one. So diffuse uses color. We don't need to change that one. Same with reflection. Now glossiness is a black and white map. So that one we need to change. So what we can do is go into our texture and we'll just say override to gamma of 1. And we'll say open. It's that easy. Now Fresnel, that is, or IOR, that is another black and white map. So we're going to change that to override. And the last one we need to do is the normal map. Now the cool thing about the Corona normal map is you can just click this little button and it'll do that for us. But if you want to keep everything consistent, you can turn it off. And again, it actually tells you here, Corona does that. It's probably loaded with an incorrect gamma. So we're going to go into this and we can just say override to 1. Now another thing I like to do is I like to turn the blur down. What this does is it brings out a lot of detail. Max is by nature blurring some of this really small micro detail to kind of help with the render engine and help with the AA. By turning down the blur, we're introducing more detail. However, we're making the render engine work a little harder. So we don't want to do this on everything in the scene. We want to just do it with things that are going to be right in front of the camera, just to kind of bring in a little more detail out of the maps. So I'm going to turn this and the rest of the maps to a blur value of 0.2. And let's do that too with diffuse. Now the nice thing is we can click this little over button and it just goes over to the next map and you can get through these pretty quickly, just like that. And then we have our normal, which is at 0.2, and that's at 0.2. Another cool thing too is when we're rendering, like let's actually turn this off. I'm going to turn this back to the wrong gamma. Usually a Corona render will warn you when this is happening. So here we get this, the normal map appears to be using the incorrect gamma. It even tells you the map if you ended up naming that, where that is. So that's kind of cool. And it'll tell you with other like the IOR and glossiness if you've got the wrong gamma, which actually is a pretty cool little safety measure there. So let's turn this back. Again, sometimes we forget, which is fine. Now the last thing we need to do is by default, Corona materials have no reflectivity. Now look at this. Why is it all black? Oh no. So we need to turn on reflection because this is a metallic object. All of the information is going to be in the reflections channel. If you look at actually the diffuse, if we go to view image here, it's just black because all of the information is in the reflection map. So as soon as we pop this up, whoop, we're going to see it shows. Now if we get some weirdness in the preview sphere here, generally it's due to, again, wrong gammas in some of the maps. So that's something that you got to check. If it looks funny, start looking through the maps and see if maybe the normal is off, gloss, or even the IOR could be just not gamma corrected properly. Now this is already applied to the material, but again, if you look and this is turned on, it's all black because it just defaults to the diffuse texture, which is black. So if we want to see the reflection texture, we can go into the reflection map, turn that on, and you can kind of see that. So if we're doing screenshots or something to clients and they want to see that that's what that's going to look like, that's how you do that. So let me add one more texture in. I'll go a little quicker this time, just so you can kind of see the workflow in real time. I'm going to eyedrop this metal portion. We'll go here and type, I believe this texture set was R metal. Yeah, there we go. So real quick, diffuse, reflection. Let's move this over. Glossiness, IOR. And one weird thing is it doesn't let you drag it into these little map nodes here. You have to actually drag it down where the map sections are, unfortunately. And normal, height, gamma correct. Make sure you turn your maps down to 0.2. And if I go back to diffuse, again, I want to not blur these or turn down the blur on these. And this is our glossiness map, which we need to override, and IOR, which we need to override. We probably don't need to blur this one because it's black, but for good measure. And again, our sphere is black. Oh no, turn up your reflection and you'll see it come in. So I'm going to apply this. Again, it's black because it's defaulting to the diffuse texture. So if we go into reflectivity, turn that on, there you go. Now I'm going to finish the rest of these up real quick just so you don't have to watch me do that. And I'll show you guys how to connect up the self-illumination or the glow that we're going to have on this reception desk. So I'll be back in just a second. All right, so I've got all the maps connected up, as you can see. Let me show you some of the weirdness I was talking about if some of the maps aren't properly gamma corrected. The biggest one is like the normal map. If I turn this off, we get this weird, look at it's trippy. So some of that happens. It also happens with the IOR. Let me see if I can make that happen as well. So again, if your shader ball just looks off, start checking some of these maps. It's kind of a good troubleshoot. This will kind of like invert sometimes the shading. It's not too bad, but you just get this really bright, over bright highlight there in the corner. So again, if you see some issues or if you get that error that Corona Render kind of prompts during rendering, go back and just check your maps there. Okay, so let's get this emissive set up. Now how I like to do it is I like to have individual control over it. We could technically pipe the self-illumination map into this slot here and turn this up, but it can sometimes cause weirdness. So what I like to do is I'm going to use a blend material. And actually, again, this gives us a little more control. This is this Corona layered material. So we're going to keep this as the base. And what we're going to do is add the emissive on top of that. And the cool thing is because we extracted a mask, let me see if I can get that up. Desk or emissive. Okay, this guy here. Now this is the mask on where these UV islands were located. So what we can actually do is just create something even like a light material, not even necessarily the emissive that we had out of Substance Painter, and just mask out that area, which we exported from Painter, to control that material and where it's going to be placed on the model. So if I go over here, let's just try actually a light material because I want to have some individual control over this. So we can make this something like a nice warm glow. And we'll turn this up to like 5, let's say. And that has emit light on. We can even do directionality if we wanted to. Now this is applied to the material, and because we have no mask set on it, it's going to be applied to 100% of the model. Now we don't want that, obviously. So what it would do is we can just take our mask here and pipe that in there. So now it's only going to be applied to the bottom of the desk. And actually, let's see if we can see it. If I turn this on, this will show us that texture. Let me isolate this. But it doesn't show the bottom. Let's see if this will let us. Nope, that one doesn't show us either. I think we could see the mask though here. Yeah, so this just kind of shows us where this light material is going to pop up. So kind of cool. With the ability to export masks out of Substance Painter, it gives us more control than just slapping all the textures on to one of our models. So let's go ahead and end this isolation. Let's go into our reception view. Let's go back. I want to turn on just the look of the desk there. Okay, let's pull up a little IPR here. And if we give it a sec, we'll be able to see kind of it glowing down at the bottom here. So see that? Let's just do a little region render. And then we have control over the intensity of this now because we have this mask masking out the corona light. So I can do something like 10, maybe something like 20. So there you go. You get a cool little glow underneath. Again, something subtle. It just adds a little more details into our scene, and more of these we can kind of pile up. This is what kind of helps push photorealism. So I'm going to stop this. So let's kind of mix some of these up, and then we'll do a full render on these. Let me center the pivot. And let's get rid of that guy. And we'll do a cool little render on this to see our work. Okay. And we'll start the render. Actually, before we do, there was one other thing that I wanted to show you guys. I almost forgot. It was controlling the normal and bump information. Let's say height and normal information after the fact. I had mentioned that I like to have the normal information a little crazy or a little higher than I normally would within Substance Painter because we have control over that in 3ds Max and how much of that is going to come through. So if we go to our material, it was this actually, the wood material. It has a lot of normal and height information, maybe a little too much. We've got this little value here of 1. This is either 1 or 0, which is off, and 1, which is full. We can do something like a percentage, like 0.75, which is 75%, and that kind of updates. Something like maybe 25% would be kind of nice, where it's real subtle. But this was kind of what I was talking about, where let's say the maps came in like this, and we wanted more height information. We can't get it because it's already set to 1. We can sometimes do things like 2 and increase it. However, weird stuff can kind of happen. So again, always export your textures with a little more height and normal information than maybe you would because you can always kind of dial it back. Okay, now let's jump over to our camera views and we'll get some renders here. So in part 4 here, we were able to texture a few objects with Substance Painter, one of them having UVs, the other one not. The nice thing about Painter now, it will automatically unwrap objects that come in without UVs applied to them. In part 5, we'll work with this scene in Unreal Engine and utilize Substance Painter's live link to Unreal. So hopefully we'll see you in the next one.